Hi there, so I'm in the garden where it's surprisingly noisy with all the birds calling, but I'm going to spend today doing some sketches of blue tits coming to the feeders at the back of the studio. And there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. The first one was the importance of finding somewhere comfortable to sit down when you're sketching, hence this deck chair, which I take with me all over the countryside, sketching wherever I can carry something for a reasonable distance. The other thing I wanted to talk about was different techniques, and I am an artist who uses lots of different materials, and I'm constantly experimenting with new materials and surfaces. And for me, the reason is that I'm always exploring new ways and new techniques of creating work, and that gives me opportunities to find unexpected ways of making the paint and the drawing work. So I'm going to be talking about different ways of using different materials today, and one of those is using different coloured and different textured papers. So I often sketch on white paper in the spiral bound sketchbook, but I've got sketchbooks which contain lots of coloured papers like this beautiful Frogmore paper, and I'm going to be using that today with this blue pencil, which will allow quite smoky, soft effects. So I'm going to draw with that first and then work over it in watercolour. So let's give it a go. Okay, I'm just watching the birds flying around. I'm just deciding on first of all, on just a rough shape for the bird, and I'm going to do this kind of life size. You can see I'm just sort of working out the shape of the body of the bird, and then, well, what's the head going to look like? Just almost a line like that, and then that's the starting point, which will work up from beginning to work in some of the darker areas. Okay, and I'm using this blue Frogmore paper for my sketch pad and using a blue pencil to sketch it in. I'm just doing a little bit as the birds nip back and forward to the feeder or dot about in the trees outside. So just putting the darker bits. It's got this lovely smoky effect, the pencil, and I'm thinking about these as smudges rather than anything else, and that's helping me just to just almost intuitively work out where the shapes are, thinking about where the darkest bits are and then leaving the lightest bits, and actually even sketching some of that negative space which I've talked about before, and that's suggesting these lighter edges. Now the challenge is going to be translating this with watercolour on top of it and keeping those soft smoky edges. So this is beginning to look quite good. Just softly sketched out. So I've mixed some ultramarine and cerulean watercolour, and I'm actually going to just drop a tiny bit of black into it and a tiny bit of ochre, and then I'm going to paint like this around the space surrounding the bird. But the key here is to keep it really light. So I actually want some of there's a lot of water in this, and I want some of these lines to come and show through quite strongly, even the sort of scribbled in lines I've got in the background. So I've put it on as a mid-tone, and now I'm adding lots of water and letting that dilute. And because the paper is tinted, I'll be able later to work light into that to give it highlights. So I want to keep this really soft just at the minute, and remembering that what I'm leaving are going to be the mid-tones. Okay, so I'm going to use this blue, it's very navy blue, ultramarine, tiny bit of black in it, and I'm just going to start sketching. I'm using this tiny brush, and effectively what I'm doing is just sketching in, strengthening some of the blue pencil lines. The bit I'm going to concentrate on is around the eye. And again, I'm going to paint this in with this blue. So I'm maintaining that colour chord that I established early on with the blue paper and the blue pencil. So immediately two things are kind of going on here. First is that this paper is not very well sized. It's really a drawing paper, so it doesn't take paint like a watercolour paper does. So the water-based paint just sort of sits on the surface and then blots in. And that has a very high absorbance, and that contrasts with the areas where I've drawn with a pencil, which has got a resist. So that little bit where I'm working on now, over the top of the pencil, you can see the paint is kind of repelled by the pencil surface. So it creates this textured edge effect. And that's lovely. So we've got these different things happening as lines. So if I put a line across a bit here, it can feel and see different effects. Sometimes you need a really bright, vivid colour, and it's better to get something that's specially made. This is a cobalt turquoise, which is this iridescent, almost blue watercolour. I'm going to use that for a patch on the wing. So right here, look at that. So secret tip, if you use a really bright colour somewhere in the picture, hide a little dab of it elsewhere. And that just keys into the rest of the painting. And the next thing is yellow. Here we go. Now this is the complementary colour of the blue. When I paint this on, first of all, it stands out, but when it dries, it's going to soften and become a little greyer because the blue is going to come through from the paper underneath. So next is going to be a little bit of permanent gouache white. And first off, painted really quite thick here and here, just picking up the really high-lit white spots on the bird's face. Okay, and next is going to be just the edges of the white face mask there, and a tiny little highlight in the eye. There we go. And nearly lastly, really, don't want to overwork this, picking up some of the white highlights just here and there. Okay, and I really think I'm nearly finished now, but I'm going to work in with this lemon yellow and white, which I'm going to just put in here on the flank of the bird.